Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Currency Podcast with me, your host. I'm Matt Connor. I'm your host, and it's me. I'm the host. In case you didn't know, and so I've done 90 episodes to this point, and this is the 91st. I do believe, in fact, I know that that's true. It's a fact that this is the 91st episode, and I deal in facts. I love facts. Can't get enough of them. And I love to go into the factual world. Actually, no, not really. I don't. I like to go into the imagined world, or the world that I imagine anyway. And so then that world is going to be like relatively factual or not. But I feel like people like to say, "Hey, I'm on the side of facts," and then this gives them grounds to act like the things they're saying are facts. It's like how people just agree with science, and then this makes them think that they get to talk about science like they are the scientist. Like people act like they're the authority on science as long as they just agree they're on the side of science. Um, science is a front. Criticism is a front. Currency is a front. I on here I talk about currency, things that are a front that people put on. I guess you could say things that are like pretentious, or in other words, things that people are pretending to do. Those things are platitudinal, or they consist of platitudes. Like people put out platitudes, kind of like cliches. You can put out a cliche just in your speech. I mean, it's sort of like rhetoric, I guess. Platitudes are like rhetoric, but platitudes aren't good because they're too surface level, maybe. Not that the surface level is bad, but I've been talking about in recent episodes the dynamic between the real and the fake, and the fake is like currency, characteristically, I'd say, is more fake to the extent that you'd agree with me. Like, if you agree with me that you could say water is like fake and the land is like real, then you would say that currency is fake because currency is like water. Currency is like an alternative form of water, sort of. And maybe I'm delving into the same kind of area of speaking where people say that data is like oil or something, like it's a resource that you want to collect, and it's like diverted down certain pathways, but like the internet creates this giant delivery system for information and kind of makes it like water in that way, in the same way that all of the rivers across the world as connected to oceans and things like that, and how they flow into lakes. That's one giant delivery system for water. Is just like the way that the earth works. But if you are a historical major civilization like the Romans, or pretty much all of the major civilizations, a major civilization doesn't exist without it creating some unique way to get a bunch of water flowing in its direction. Like the Romans invented aqueducts. Like cryptocurrency is a new delivery system that's been invented. That's what it provides, is that it's like a cryptocurrency. The computer program written for that, calls out that now there's a delivery system that exists for there's a delivery system that exists for money that didn't exist before. That's the function that's provided. Like that's the product, is this really efficient delivery system that hasn't existed before. That's what cryptocurrency provides. Um, It's a delivery system. It's a little bit like Amazon, but it's just kind of like a matter of time before people come up with more articulate ways of expressing the delivery system. Like there's a number of ways you can tokenize the things that you're delivering, but it's kind of like cryptocurrency comes along. A cryptocurrency, it's not big right now because it's really a pretty young industry. But when you think about it, it's very difficult for any industry to break into the current banking industry. Like international banking is so set in stone, and there's so much power with that, and a lot of them are tied into national government so much that international banking is like an impossible industry to break into. And in fact, you would, before cryptocurrency is invented, you would have said that it's completely untouchable. But cryptocurrency is it's an industry all its own. So it's like we can criticize it for lots of reasons. Like it's easy to criticize it when it hasn't yet delivered completely, even though as if you're just considering it to be like a stock, it it's increased quite a bit in the last 10 years. Like it's up quite a bit for it being just a stock. But cryptocurrencies are better than stocks because they're a unique industry, and this is something you can look to see that they do inherently have value, is that it's an industry all its own. Stocks as an industry don't do anything near what cryptocurrencies do, because cryptocurrency actually provides this delivery system for money that hasn't existed before, and it's a revolutionary system, kind of like aqueducts for the Roman Empire or something, uh, because like in comparison to the way that money goes around the world now, if you uh, like if you try to take your money out of your bank account in your bank and try to put it in a different bank, this is a arduous process because you have to sign a lot of documents. Like you have to sign documents to open up a new bank account with a new bank or whatever. And so there's barriers to moving your money around quickly. But with cryptocurrency, like you get to transfer your money to any other banking address anywhere in the world. Like if everybody was using cryptocurrency as opposed to the current banks that they're using, like in international banks like Chase Bank or whatever, you would have a banking system that you automatically get to route your money, divert it through whatever channel you want. It really brings into focus, I mean, it makes money, gives money the ability to be more liquid or flow to more places faster. It gives it the opportunity to be more like water, which is the way that it is. Like money is characteristically like water, I'm saying. Like, so you might just disagree with me. Like, don't say money is the same as water. But it's like money is a kind of thing that's always in motion the way that water is, but it's an infinite kind of thing. Um, Money is an infinite kind of thing where, as opposed to finite. So it's not, if you are getting to the heart of what money is supposed to be, you're talking about something that is moving all the time, something that is in motion, the way that infinity is, but it's fake as opposed to real. But like fake in the way that water is ungraspable, or it's sort of like fleeting. Any momentary image you have of a river, that image, like that water is gone, and the next image, like water is fleeting. Um, in that respect, but it's kind of like that it's fake. But I'm making the argument that things that are in motion are fake, and things that are real are stuck in the same place. But like things that are real are more concerned with appearances, like what I was saying in the previous episode. That like being real is like a competition, but like the competition to win a game is a competition to be the most real. But what I would say brings into focus is that winners are actually pretty concerned with appearances, because winners are concerned with the top layer. But like winning, what pretty much always goes along with that is acting the part, or like looking like a winner is a major part of winning. But it's kind of like winning is more concerned with appearances than you would think, or it's more, winning is more about having the right appearance than you would think. Like, for example, if you're a low level employee trying to move up the ranks in your given company, it involves looking the part, like dress for the job that you want, not the one that you have, but it would involve looking more professional or getting more into character, getting more into costume for what your company is asking for in accordance with the rules of the game that your company is putting out there. Like, following the rules or conforming more and more to the image that the company wants of you that's what's going to make you more like the CEO, who is like the ultimate face, ultimate representation in an individual for the company. Like, conforming to the image involves a lot of looking the part, and just like being real. Actually, I feel like to some great extent it involves appearances, but what's more significant is that winners are good at appearances. But it's more like a winner, seeing as that the CEO is like the greatest winner for that company. And obviously it's like, in real life, having lots of money doesn't necessarily bring you happiness, or like being a CEO doesn't make you a better person. But I'm saying, like, within the company and within the guidelines for that game, people trying to win at that, like, it's just that being more like the thing, and like winning involves following a lot of rules, but conforming to the image, appearances. And so is it advantageous to focus a lot on appearances when it's like, the point that I was starting to launch into was just that if you're a winner, you actually are good at modeling yourself after the appearances of every level of the competition, every lower level. Like, in order to work your way up the ranks, you have to be able to replicate an image at every single level of it, something that's expected of you. But what I'm talking about is almost like graduation, where in order to graduate 8th grade, you have to do all the 8th grade academics, all the 8th grade stuff, so that you look like an 8th grader, so that you can pass to 9th grade. Like, you wouldn't be concerning yourself with 10th grade studies as an 8th grader, even though, like, graduating 10th grade is ultimately the goal, even if your current status is 8th grader. In order to graduate all of the levels, or like graduate from 12th grade, like, ultimately, if that's the goal, you have to meet the image of every lower level every single step of the way, as long as there's a graduation that's expected of you. And so it works that same way in a company. But so, like, it just speaks to that if you're like the ultimate leader of a company. But like, company, I wouldn't want to just focus on that. Maybe another good example would just be Hitler or something. Like, Hitler was at the very top of the collective that was Germany. Like, Hitler as an individual empowered a collective the same way that, like, every major collective, or a lot of them, basically every major collective is the result of, like, an individual is empowering a collective. Like, a collective and an individual together. This is kind of like wave particle duality a little bit, where the collective is a more socialized version, more socialized representation of what the individual is representing. But I'm just talking about how at the top of a major company, or like the leader of a country, like Hitler to Germany, at the top is the image, and then everybody below the image is just kind of like walking in the footsteps of that person. But it's like, in some senses, you can't have the collective without the individual, You can have the individual without the collective. Like, I don't know if it is true every single time there is a company that it's like you can look to that it's an individual empowering them, but for so many examples, this is what's true. Like the United States, what empowers that collective? Ultimately, there's a president empowering the population that is the United States. And like ultimately with Germany, Hitler, the individual, was empowering a collective, the collective of Germany. But so there's a certain real fakeness dynamic that happens with something like that. But like, would you say that Hitler was real and then everybody below them is fake? Like, is the CEO? I'll just stick with that. I'll just stick with that for now because that's the easiest way for me to explain, I guess, what I'm thinking about. Um, like I guess the CEO is the most real, but they're the best at appearances because they're the best at mirroring the appearance of any other level in the company. But I'm talking about something like the winner of the game is the most undefinable person, but becoming the most undefinable, you like lose your soul along the way. And it's like if you win something, you ultimately, it's like you've sold out for an appearance. If you become the face of the country, like if you become the president is the person who's the best at like talking out of their ass the most, or the person who's just concerned with like platitudes and authorities that are appearancist. Like the whole political game is really appearancist. But how the leader of something is the best at replicating they're the leader of something or the winner of something. And I'm talking about like the leader of any internal hierarchy or the leader of any group. Um, so I'm kind of talking about things that exist in a subjective space as opposed to an objective one. That's what I'm focusing on is the within of something or the subjectivity of something. The within of something is the subjectivity of it because that's where you're describing how there is a power dynamic. And I'm describing different levels of power, different levels of authority, where the top level of authority within a group is the most undefinable person. But this person, what is new, like I've talked about this in the past, but what is new about what I'm saying, or hopefully what is new about it, the thing I'm trying to bring to the table that I haven't brought to it before, the thing that is significant. Besides that, I just come up with, I'm saying like 30 things to say the thing that is significant. I guess just because I'm stalling for time, because do want to do a whole hour. It's like, I got to keep, obviously that's going on, but I'm bringing into focus the within of something or the internal hierarchy, quote unquote, area of life, as opposed to the objective side of it. Because looking at Hitler and his relationship to the rest of Germany, this is the hierarchy of the group that is like 1930s, 1940s Germany. Germany circa that time period where the internal hierarchy is defined by fascism and Hitler leading it. And in that case, Hitler is like the lead fascist. And but I'm talking about the subjective because within the subjective is where you get the power dynamic. The objective doesn't work like that. Let me give you an example. The Let me give you an example. The example I'd like to use is that of love. Love, we try to describe it to ourselves. Like the 5 love languages comes along, and this is an attempt by people to categorize love, which I'd say is a good thing to do. Anytime you're breaking down something that exists into more specific definitions, This is a worthy attempt because that, in my opinion, that's more progressive and that's more intelligent. Like the two-party American political system is not very intelligent because we should break that down into more parties, or at least describe it that way. There are alternative parties that exist, but the like institutionally, the Republican and Democratic parties have so much power and so much wealth, and they're so central to the American identity that you can't. It's like getting rid of those is like getting rid of America, and so like we have to continue with this two-party system, and that silences the voice of any alternative parties. But obviously, it would be more intelligent if there were like 30 choices, because just naturally it's more intelligent to be more open and more inclusive, and you're more open if you're considering like 30 different parties. But we remain stupid because the two parties are what is in power any more so than it is Republicans or Democrats at any one time. That's not important. It's the two-party system is the problem because it continues to maintain that there aren't like a lot of different voices you could hear from. And because in reality, it is the case that there are very many different voices, but in the current climate, we are breaking down the two-party system just naturally, since there's lots of people rising up on the internet, people with YouTube channels, people broadcasting themselves, and we're voting for them. This automatically makes it so that we're voting in a much more open-minded democracy, and like that is the new democracy, is what I'm saying. It's just a matter of time before we kind of shoo away this dumb political way of doing things. It's just that we should come to a place where we see politicians to be more and more useless because their skill set is becoming more useless because they're mostly just given over to appearances, but they don't really contribute anything. Like they're not like an entrepreneur where they made a business or they're putting a product on the market. They are just people who talk their way into power. And when that's the case, those politicians are basically just people who are concerned with appearances and getting to the highest level of appearance possible. But if you make it to the level of like US senator, I think that speaks to your ability to, like, if you're a federal senator, United States senator, as opposed to a state senator, this speaks to your, like, you are able to mirror the appearance of lower level senators at like the city or the state level. Um, but I'm just making the point how politics is all about having the like looking presidential or looking like a senator. And but as our standards for president or senator deteriorate, which I believe is happening with the internet, like the internet makes it so that we have all these alternative people that are like with their YouTube channels making content, or podcasters are like posing as political figures because they're talking their way into power in a similar way, but there's just so many voices doing it. Um, it's just that anyway, the I'm getting off topic because I am giving you too much filler, or like I'm avoiding what I'm wanting to say, which is that um love is a thing that you can look to that shows us a picture of the objective versus a subjective world. I would argue that love, when it is subjective, is a different thing from love when it's objective, but we don't ever speak to this. But it's kind of like, um, it's because we discriminate against hate so much, and hate is the opposite of love. I think part of us trying to avoid the idea of hate is saying that the opposite of love is fear, which is inaccurate. The opposite of love is hate. We might try to avoid talking about hate by saying the opposite of love is fear. But like, basically what I want to say is that love is when love is subjective, it is more of a power dynamic. It's more of like a domination submission kind of thing. That's and there's an argument to be made. I would say that love, when it manifests itself internally or subjectively, is more like hatred, or like a love that comes across in a power dynamic kind of way, where it's like submissive dominant. Um, love that is more objective, this is more like physical or like sex or like physical love, objective love is more like sex, and then not that subjective love isn't, but it's just kind of like imagined love versus love that manifests itself physically, like sex. These are two different things, but we call all of it love. And it's more like imagined love that doesn't actually manifest itself physically. This is something more like hatred, or it's just kind of a love that plays out vertically as opposed to horizontally. But what I'm talking about is inverses of things like love and hate are opposites. They're like inverses of each other, the same way that objective versus subjective, those are opposites of each other. And so, really, you would discredit the idea of love to say that it's all about love and never about hate. And really, if you're going to have a more evolved picture of love, this automatically means that you're going to have to evolve it to like what its opposite is. Like if you want love to continue to be relevant or to continue to change, then you are saying that we need to include the picture of love where, or like we need to understand, changing love means figuring out what love's relationship to hatred is. And so I'm arguing that love's relationship to hatred is that hatred is the internal manifestation of love or the subjective manifestation, and love is what manifests objectively. But let me more pinpoint what I'm saying. Like, the thing is that people say, don't treat a woman like she's an object. Like that's we could all agree is one of the greatest evils. It's like don't treat a woman like she's an object. But this is an inaccurate way of saying it. What people mean is don't treat a woman like she's a subject or like she is your subject. That's actually what people mean. Treating a woman like she's an object is actually the way that it's supposed to be done. That is consensual. But like this is the kind of thing I'm talking about, is that we should be more intelligent with what we're discussing with love, or break it down into categories. But you can't go from 1 to 5 like the 5 love languages does. You actually the only way that you become more intelligent about love is if you divide it from 1 to 2. You have to start with 2 rather than go from 1 to 5 with the 5 love languages. Like categorizing love is important, but you actually have to. It's just that the only way that this naturally evolves, I'm saying, like into the future, is us focusing more on love's counterpart, which is hatred. And I'm not saying that hatred is like that's really something we should want. I'm just saying in the future we'll focus on this more, but it's like being more open-minded about hatred would allow you to see that it is just kind of like an idea, not something that we should say is the greatest evil, but that's the way that we treat it now. We try to discriminate it out of existence, but this is just us refusing to graduate to a higher level of understanding it where we're okay with hatred. But it's kind of just like hatred isn't evil, it's just the imagined or internal manifestation of love. But it's like don't treat a woman like she's an object. Don't treat a woman like she's an object. If that's true, you're telling me to treat her like she's a subject, and that can't be what we want to do as a society. But it's really just more that when people talk about that statement, don't treat a girl like she's an object. They're basically saying like you should feed more into the reality where you are the woman's subject, or it's like, but the focus there is on subjective love. Then you're saying if love isn't, I'm not supposed to have an objective view of love when I look at a girl. I should have a subjective view of it. You're saying that love needs to be a power dynamic where either she is my subject or I am her subject, because that's what's different about the subjective world, is that it's all power driven or it's all vertical. If it objective is the way I should view a woman, because that's the one where I view her to be another thing outside of myself, because object, literally translated, is a thing outside of myself. And so this is the way you should view other people, as other things outside of yourself. If you're viewing them subjectively, then you're saying like, oh, they are less than me or they are more than me. But this is a really important thing about just like a discussion of subjective versus objective is like this is a worthy discussion. People should bring this up more. We confuse object with subject pretty easily because they're near in nature to each other, kind of because they're overlapping in every instance. Like the inside of your house, this is like, or the inside of any building, this is I would argue you call it this is the subjective space of the building. But if you go outside of your house and then view it, then you can view the entire thing as one whole thing. You get to view it as an object. But when you're within something, you're subject to it. There's a difference between, it's just like within the borders of something is subjective. Outside of the borders of it is you get to view that thing as an object. And so, like, also, it doesn't make sense to be like, don't view a woman like she's an object, because that's not a motivator for anybody to have sex with a girl, is if you liken her to an armchair. Like thinking of viewing a girl to be more like furniture isn't going to motivate you to go and have sex with her. Like that's never been the problem. Like, oh, men are getting more aggressive because they're viewing women to be like an armchair. The reason you have sex with a girl is because she's less like an armchair and more like a human. Like it's that she's a human and not like furniture is what's attractive about her. It's never been a problem like view her as an object. It's just that what people mean is you're not supposed to make her your subject, which is correct because that's very domineering, and it isn't necessary. Then you're just making love about a power dynamic. And so obviously physical love does manifest itself in submissive domination ways. And so like it wouldn't be accurate to say physical love is never submissive dominant. I mean, like maybe it kind of sort of always is. But I'm saying it's just more consensual if it's like we're viewing each other as, if we're both viewing each other as objects outside of ourselves, like that's a lot more consensual than a power dynamic. But what I'm saying is that imagined love is something like manifests itself as like hatred, where there's more of a hatred element to putting people below you, or like making it so that that's the case. It's more like a hatred kind of thing. But I'm saying how the subjective world is dominant like this. It's authoritative. It's like, and this is what I'm focusing on when I talk about the within of a company or the within of the power structure of Nazi Germany. That is the within of something, because Nazi Germany describes that at the top you have Hitler, and he's empowering all the lower levels of authority below him, all the other levels of the hierarchy. And so which one of those is more fake and which one is more real? Like objective is more real because you're able to view singular things as graspable, but like in the subjective world, this is more fake because authorities are fake. They're fake because they are just posings that people are doing. They're impositions. They're perceived, they're believed. But this goes along with the subjective world, or a subjective space, because a subjective space is more imagined. It relies on belief, and really authorities all rely on you believing that person has the authority. But like further proof that hatred, it's just that like dominant, submissive, it's the kind of love that is played out in a not consensual way. That kind of love, you could still call it love that is more submissive, dominant. you could still call it love, but I think it'd be more accurate. Maybe we should call that thing like hatred, where hatred isn't the worst thing ever. It's just kind of a power dynamic form of love. It's the love that happens internally, because we should probably view things that way, that the internal the like what is the internal counterpart to the thing that happens externally in any area. But like and I think a lot of times what you'd find is that you can describe the internal thing as the opposite of the external thing. But like, I'm just using objective versus subjective as a template for love that happens physically versus love that happens like in a more imagined sort of way. But like currency is fake. Currency is fake. It's like water. It's like infinite because it's always moving, or it's fleeting. And like I can't remember if I followed through on the point or not about the delivery system. That cryptocurrency is like a delivery system because it makes money more liquid, which is the way that money already is. But if you and cryptocurrency, it's pretty much impossible. It's an industry all its own, and it's an industry that's threatening the international banking industry. And so this is like something like this hasn't come along, but cryptocurrencies are different from stocks because they're like, it's an industry all its own. And what matters is like there might be a number of things that could happen in terms of public sentiment that shifts sentiment to cryptocurrency, because if cryptocurrency really is a unique industry, it provides a unique service, which I'm arguing it does, because the delivery system is unlike anything we've ever seen, because you can't take money out of your account and put it into another banking account really easily. With the cryptocurrency whole industry, like network, it connects Bitcoin to Ethereum to all other cryptocurrencies very easily. So you can actually shift your money between different banks as quickly as you want to, but the entire system is a network. Like it's like the internet, but for money. And it's kind of like an alternative to like the same way that a civilization becomes really powerful because it's able to harness the power of water, and now realize that money is like water. It's just this alternative form of it. But for the global scale, cryptocurrency is an invention that allows for the entire world as a civilization to divert the most amount of water possible to its entire self all the time. And so maybe it's like viewing cryptocurrency, it's ultimately a delivery system that's created the same way that like Amazon is a major delivery system that is revolutionary in the area of delivery systems, and this is what makes it so much money. Is like, yeah, like just look at Amazon and see that Amazon's product ultimately is that it's a revolutionary delivery system. Realize then that cryptocurrency is a delivery system even more efficient than Amazon, because it doesn't have to deal with all the physical assets. But I mean, like, so it's difficult to say where, like, obviously cryptocurrency isn't exactly like Amazon because it isn't delivering physical things, and we will continue to live in a world where physical things need to be delivered. But like, different cryptocurrencies will come along that tokenize delivering things in different ways. But pretty much I'm talking about how cryptocurrency is it's a product, definitely more than a stock. Like it's not a stock because a stock doesn't produce anything. Like cryptocurrency, like you could call them stocks, but all of those, every cryptocurrency, the entire collection of those is a unique industry. And since that is the case, since it can't be replicated, it's kind of like it'll always be around. And it's like it's an internet. They're better than stocks because stocks don't come anywhere near replicating like what an internet does, but cryptocurrency is like a faux internet. Um, since it's always around, there are like there are a number of things that could happen, like if the entire stock system, the collection of stocks, if people start putting their money more into cryptocurrency as opposed to stocks, or in other words, like if cryptocurrency becomes more independent, if stocks become dependent on cryptocurrency and people realize that this is the case, where it's like you can pretty evidently see that cryptocurrency and stocks are going alongside each other in today's world. Like they both went down recently. Stocks went down and cryptocurrency went down. They're kind of tied in with each other. If it became the case that people saw cryptocurrency to be more independent than stocks, which this could very feasibly happen because cryptocurrencies are automatically more independent because they actually produce a service and stocks don't. So if the stocks world becomes dependent on the cryptocurrency world, and this becomes evident, where it's like whatever happens with cryptocurrency is what affects stocks. If that becomes evident to people, then people will start perceiving cryptocurrency to be more powerful, and then they'll start putting their money into it more. But there's a lot of things like this that could happen. It's the same with like cryptocurrency in comparison to like national banks or whatever. Like if sentiment starts to shift a little bit in one direction towards cryptocurrency for things like this, or like people, all it would take is for people to perceive it to be more independent than other things, which is like the possibility for this to happen is constantly happening because cryptocurrency is a unique market and will probably always be around because people can't replicate that industry. It's a brand new industry, and it has only grown since it was incepted like 15 years ago. It's just difficult that it wouldn't take on the international banking industry overnight, because the international banking industry has a ton of power, but like it is currency is like water and is a thing that's always in motion, and so you would want the most efficient delivery system possible when it comes to money, and it helps us put money more under the radar or more out of existence, or to be something that's fake, but like this is the Currency Podcast. I'm talking to you about like I make an episode about being ignorant or something like that. I'm talking about reputations that people have, that people do in order to stay current. But I was talking at the end of a different episode about how everybody in the world maintains conversational relevance, and or like everybody is constantly creating, but they kind of like people have to put on the appearance of something because everybody's kind of participating in this giant competition. And I would argue that anytime you're talking, you're sort of like performing. But it's just that some people do it better than others. But it's really like the people who are the most popular are the most concerned with appearances. Like whoever wins the game is the person who becomes most popular. Like popularity and fame and money go along with winning whatever competition that you're a part of. But it's even in just like a social group, the person who's the most popular in the group is the person that the rest of the people in the group are most dependent on. And this ultimately is the person who embodies the group the most within themselves as an individual, or represents the image of the group the best. The person that does that is the person most relative to everybody else in the group. This is something that happens in a subjective space. And so it's like the winner of a subjective space ends up being the appearance outwardly for the group. And this is to say that it is only the winner that embodies both the subjective and the objective, or is able to put their foot both in the subjective and the objective world. So it's like the most popular person in a friend group I would argue it's like the person who represents that group the best. they're the image for it for the rest of the world. So there's like the CEO of a company is this for a company. They are the person that, as a person, is the face of the company for the rest of the world. So like outwardly, when the world sees that company as an object or as one thing, um, the best you're going to do to see a person as representative of that company as one thing is look at the CEO. And it's the same for Hitler with Germany. Like Nazi Germany as represented in one person is definitely Hitler, but it's because he is the person that the rest of the people in Germany are most dependent on. He created it. It's his vision. It's almost like the person most popular in the group is like they did the most to create that group, or it's like their vision, really. So it's like Hitler is the person that the rest of the world is able to see Nazi Germany as like an object through Hitler more so than, or I mean, they could just look at Germany, the collective, or like everybody within Germany at the time. You could look at that too. There's a few ways you could look at something and summarize it to be an object, but you can't see something as an object while you are within it, is the point. While you are within the subjective space of something, then you are subject to subjectors of all kinds, people imposing authorities or just levels of authority that happen within a subjective space. You're subject to those. That's what's important about subjectivity, is that it is a subjecting space. It all happens vertically, or like where you, in order to move up. But I'm talking about capitalism versus socialism, or in other words, order versus chaos. In a subjective space, there is order. And then in an objective space, maybe is more like, it's, I don't, it's hard to describe this. It's hard to describe this, but there's the competitive part of it, and then there's the non-competitive part of it. There's like capitalism versus socialism, but yes, I don't know that there's any singular point that I'm making today, but I mean, I am an individual. But any podcaster is an individual that empowers a collective, and that collective is their audience. But it's like the individual along with collective is like a particle along with a wave. Like they're always alongside each other. You don't get one without the other. Like wave particle duality dictates that everything is both a particle and a wave. And this doesn't just, by the way, this doesn't just extend to particles. It ultimately is the same for like giant objects in the world. Like an object that you see, anything you see, like a chair, is a particle that in some way is connected to a wave, or like an infinity. Like for a chair, the infinity that a chair is connected to is like anything that a chair can manifest itself as, or all of the different images or forms that a chair takes within the territory, within the definition of a chair, whatever a chair can be. But like singular, infinite. I'm just bringing up a number of disconnected points and trying to connect them. I just thought of something interesting just a moment ago that I wanted to say, but now I'm forgetting it. Which is that, like, people, I find that, I'll just tell you about something I've been thinking about recently, which is that and I've said this before, is like spending time alone versus merging myself with the rest of the world. And what I realize is that the individual world is one that you don't have to participate in, but it's kind of like a world all its own, or a culture all its own, where it's like you get stuck if you don't talk to people enough, and like I do have a social life and I talk to people frequently. It's just that maybe I have standards where I'm like I want to be connected with people a lot more often than I'm doing now, or I want to keep going in that direction. Like being more connected with everybody else in the world is a state of being, and it's like a state of being that's separate from being living in the individual world. Like being solo is kind of a culture all its own, and then what comes with it is like solitude and loneliness, but it's like the isolating nature of being alone, which like everybody sort of has to watch out for it in today's world, where it's very easy to stay in your house, where it's like other humans are becoming less and less interesting in comparison to the world of entertainment that you can find just at your fingertips in your house. Like other people are would be having a harder and harder time of competing with like uh, whatever entertainment, anything that could occupy your time. Like as long as whatever comes out of the TV or video games, like as long as people keep making more and more of them, that like the worlds that exist in virtual reality, we keep getting more of them to choose from, it'll be more and more difficult for individuals to compete. And so it's not necessarily futuristic or progressive to connect yourself with lots of different people. It might actually be more the future to go solo. Like everybody's going to go more solo, and that's actually the future. But in some senses, that's true. I think that the future will evolve for all of us to recognize each other all to be different, or that we'll value free thinking more and more, so that we'll be like, the most important thing is you speaking from your own experience or standing up for yourself, speaking your own position and what you believe to be true, rather than that it's important to be aligned with the right or the left or anything like that. And what I've just been thinking about is how you lose the culture of isolation, but it's like being alone does lure you in that direction too. Like isolationist culture causes you to be more isolationist or value isolationism or isolationist mindsets. Like going into the culture, being alone causes you to involve yourself with the culture of being alone, or like enjoying being alone or something. But it's really like a certain, it's kind of sad, because if you're alone, then you miss out on all of the different ways you can connect yourself to people. Like there's so many different people, and people are so different that like any one person you form a connection with, this is a unique connection, and you have the opportunity for so many different unique connections that it really renders the individual world so useless. And really it's like being alone in your house does not render you to being in isolation. It doesn't subject you to isolation automatically. Like if you involve yourself with social media, you text people, you talk with your friends while you're playing video games and shit like that, that is being connected too. So you can be in your house and be connected. But really what you have to watch out for is going into your own mindset too much causes a culture of aloneness, and that culture is really limiting, is something that I realize. Like and it's not for everybody, but maybe it is for everybody. Like trying to be more connected, maybe more connection is better for everybody, because you have the opportunity for so many different experiences through different unique connections you can have with different individuals, that like the culture of being an individual or being alone, that's something that you subject yourself, that's something that you get subjected to. But it's kind of like the aloneness or an imagined state of things. Maybe it's more subjective and subjecting to be less connected with the rest of the world. Like being more connected, talking to more people. What I'm saying is that I find that I like to do this I want to spend all of my time connected rather than have this large portion of my time where I'm alone or disconnected. Like what I'm saying is significant about what I've realized is that the culture of aloneness is like a culture that competes with, and it's a relative truth that competes with the culture of being connected. And it's like that, it's just that it's too stagnant when you get stuck being by yourself, or it's like the energy that's in the air, you're never harnessing it, because like you can only harness the energy of what's in the air by like, and that's kind of an abstract thing, by like forming a connection so that you're connecting with other people, or like making it so that there's a network. You have to make a network of, but like the culture of having a network is different from the culture of, so much different from the culture of being alone. And it's like that level of connectedness that I would say is maybe that's more progressive. And so the same with like being in your house, as long as you're connected with other people, that's more progressive. I'd say that being connected is still more of the future, because that's the point at which you're creating like, that's the point at which your things are in motion more, and things being in motion more is always better. Like being current or being relevant. This is like, people try to get at this. They try to be popular. They try to be current the way that the rest of the world is current. And being that kind of means being concerned with appearances, so that you embody the appearance of what's happening at this moment in time. Like being a winner doesn't just involve like winning and moving up the company ladder, but like it's kind of like the world now maybe is going in a direction where it's valuing being a winner in time as opposed to being a winner in any one entity. But it's like this plays out in time the same way it would within a company, where it's like in a company, you move up by being the most independent person in the company, being able to replicate all other levels of the company, mirror the image of what other people are looking for. This shows a lot of adaptability and a lot of agency on your part. Like you have a lot of ability and a lot of utility if you're able to look like all of the things you need to look like in order to be the best representation of the company. But like as far as time is concerned, you stay current by looking the part in every given moment. In the same way, you have to mirror different decades or different years, like different phenomena and different fads that happen in a year. If you're like the most popular or the most current or sort of the winner, like then you are somebody who is able to mirror the times that are happening, different years, year after year. But this is what the fight is about, is like it's the fight to be popular or be the most visible or be the most current. You're only going to be the most visible if you're only going to be the most visible if you are able to be visible in the most possible moments in time, or the most years, or like consistently year after year. If you're able to be the most visible, then this makes you the winner, or it's like the most current. But I would argue that this is kind of the nature of currency itself, whereas like currency is like water. Water is something that's always moving, or it's always being delivered to different places. Water is best conceptualized as being part of a giant delivery system, and money is the same way. And a network that you have with the people around you, or being more connected, is the same thing. Like a better level of connectivity, or a higher level of it, means that you are incorporating yourself into a giant delivery system where you can send your thoughts and feelings across a network more easily if you're more connected with people. Like if you have true connections with people, they will share your shit better. Like they will share it to the rest of the world. Like you'll have better word of mouth if you have better, truer connections with people, if you're more connected. And this is what makes you current, makes you relevant, makes you popular. And so since current is the word that we describe as like this, like the thing where you are true in every moment, like this moment you're current, and then, but if you stayed current a year from now, then you're still current. Like current is the word for this, sort of because water moves the same way that like time does, and time is like money also. Since current is the word for this, what I'm saying is that current is then something that we're always trying to achieve, because in any given moment, currentness is current, or it is relevant in any given moment, because every given moment is like, now it is current again. This speaks to that currentness is something that's in motion, but it's like, since this is what people aspire to win or be the most popular. This is of the future, and so what's significant is that greater levels of connectivity are the future. Isolation is never the future. And so people try to express this by saying that love is the future. There's lots of people that are like, well, eventually in the future, as we progress, we'll figure out that love is the greatest thing ever, because love is kind of like a high level of connectivity. But it's important to make the distinction between objective love, subjective love. Like what kinds of love are more isolationist or exist in a more imagined state, or are more subjective. Like emphasizing hatred more is a positive thing, because it allows us to evolve our idea of love, or evolve our idea of connectivity, have a more intelligent view of it. It would help us to sort out what are the more hateful aspects of love, or what are the more disconnected aspects of love, which it's like the opposite of love is something like disconnection or hatred. And we should really allow ourselves to explore hatred, so that we can understand what makes us connected. Like you can figure out better what makes us connected if you explore the things that make us, what is it that makes us disconnected? Having a definition for disconnecting areas of life would help us to be more connected. But it's kind of like, maybe connection is more the future always, and disconnection is the past, possibly. I don't know. In the future, I will have a podcast where I talk with people, so that I can talk out these ideas. And I'll be getting to that, but I need to wrap up this podcast. Currency, and currency is, like I'm saying right now, is fake. It's something like that's not even there. And I will keep exploring what is the extent of that, or the extent of finding money to be more fake, like the more that it is in motion, the way that like popularity is vapid, and the way that winning involves superficiality and appearances, and is fleeting. It's a complicated idea, but it's kind of like how a river is like ultimately real, like money is ultimately real. And we end up being able to describe that a river is real by calling it a river, or assigning an image to something that's in motion. But it's like, yeah, how fake is currency, or how fake is being relevant, and what is good about pursuing it, whatever. Talk to you all later.